Can you hear me? And nice. So as Chris said, I'm somehow excited today because it's my first talk in English. Actually, we had lots of talks in Iran, but it's my first time, so I'm so excited having you, and I'm really proud. So first, I wanted to start and having a boring topic about introducing nuxt.js, but in the last seconds, actually last night at 3 a.m., I tried to change my topic to something more exciting, and at least I can figure out I'm from one of the youngest people here, and all of you have experienced the history of the internet, and you feel that how things went fast and evolved into being more complex, and what new problems happened, and what new requirements happened, and what tools invented for that. So I think we can start with this. First of all, what are Homo Frontendalis? It's a new term. So in the evolution of the humans, there was a successor called Homos, and we are the Frontendalis. Actually, we was the Frontendalis, and we evolved into having more society, having more tools, and we are more advanced. But if I look at my old codes, do you keep your old codes in your system? Just look at them, and you will feel something like this. Exactly, you will feel something like this. So, one question, who can remember the old days that we was using JavaScript to show some snow effects in the websites? Just raise your hands. So all of us did that. And there was really good days because I was writing blog posts about how to add a cursor effect to your website, and everyone was excited to see something like that, or a clock widget in my website. It was so easy because I was a student, I didn't have any resources, I could easily do that. But what happened, because nowadays, if you want to make a clock widget, it's much more complex. How many days do you think it takes to make a clock library? That days was much easier because we was using plain JavaScript, no ES6, no complex stuff. But we all made this more complex, like anything in our life. So as Chris introduced me, I'm Pooya Parsa. I'm working with Nuxt.js team and really proud to having helping the vue.js team. I'm proudly working with passionate people as a consultant. I really like cats. If you have a cat, I need one. And you can follow me on Twitter. If you have any questions after presentation, I'm always there. So it's a little bit strange because front-end developers nowadays tend to think about JavaScript first. Every talk is about JavaScript, web components, frameworks, everything is around the JavaScript, and even the CSS. Nowadays, we have CSS in JS. But I thought it's really good to start with our journey with the CSS history. So CSS was really important because 6 years after the first version of HTML, that days was called electronic pages, the first version of CSS introduced, and it was really good because they could make that bare-bone pages into something more fancier. They could have some backgrounds, we could have some margins, we could align our pages, and without touching the markup. So we had markup and a way to style our pages. So it was a really good start. But there was lots of limitations. So in like few years after that, CSS2 was introduced. So it has really cool features like hover effects. So we could really make more interactive pages. Actually, JavaScript was like 1 year before CSS. I think it is the same age as me because I'm 25 years, and the JavaScript was invented the same year. But CSS2 make it us easier to make web more interactive, and that time there was lovely things like text shadows or marquees that going and showing news on your web page in front of your web page. So web got more mature, and after lots of years after that, CSS 2.1 was introduced. It was a really, really good year for designers because we had new tools like Sass and lots of more possibilities. But if you can think, before 25, we didn't have these tools. We didn't have multi-class support. We didn't have device support, so we couldn't detect a mobile device. So web is not that old. The modern web is not really that old, and it shows that how fastly it is going to be improving and evolving. But a really important point in the history, actually, I was not aware of this because I'm not that old, but yesterday I was reading about the history of internet, and this year and the years around 2011 was really exciting for me, because if you look at the framework's history, lots of cool stuff was not existed before this year, and in the next slides we will see what tools introduced in these years and how they made everything more complex, and the lovely days was ended after this year. It was somehow a new era. We had more possibilities, but we really lost lots of cool things, like you could easily make a web page and publish it. You don't need to be a front-end programmer. So Frontendalis, I think, started from here to be front-end developers. Before that, there was just programmers that could easily make a web page. And after this, we made everything more complex. With introduction of CSS3, we had a new concept of modules. So instead of versioning CSS, the CSS divided into some modules, and one of the most important modules was media queries. So if you remember the days of Bootstrap, these media queries and multi-device support started from this year. It's like 10 years ago. Before 10 years ago, can you imagine? We didn't have anything like this. So this year and years around it, not only CSS, but other parts of the front-end frameworks started improving. So this was our journey, and this is 2011. It's not really that age. And 1 year before CSS3, NPM was introduced, and before that we had some package managers like Bower. We use Bower? One more question. Who committed Bower components to Git? Me. I was committing. So that year, there was not lots of knowledge about this stuff, so some people was committing modules in their Git repositories. But fastly, some requirements started because things was more complex, we need more tools. We couldn't do that anything by hand. So we started making our tools and being more and more advanced, like anything in our life. So the first thing that started was the task runners. Who was using Golf? Thanks, guys. When I started working in web industry, I started with Golf, and I was always prodding to my colleagues that, hey, you know, I know Golf, and you are using Grunt. Grunt was introduced 1 year before Golf. But why this tool started to be introduced? First of all, we needed to automate some of our tasks, like not including separate JavaScript files in our pages. So we needed some tools to combine them together and package them, bundle them. We needed to automatic test runs. That year was SAS introduced, so we need somehow to bundle our SASs and compile them. We needed to minify CSS HTMLs, and these tasks couldn't be easily done without a task runner. And we also need to bundle our JavaScript files, love JavaScript files. So Golf was much better than Grunt because Grunt was really basic tool. It was template based. It wasn't using something like Node.js streams, and it was following a title convention for JSON configs. But Golf made it much more easier, so you could programmatically define your tasks and do whatever you want. And it's also interesting that the popular Laravel framework was also introduced around these years, and one of its advantages was integrating of Golf into its build system. So you could write a good backend and also bundle your JavaScript files with an easy tool. But very